the Moldova Social Investment Fund. It was established in 1998, I think, and it was a traditional social fund type of project, which is providing grants to the communities for rehabilitation of social and economic infrastructure, but based on the demands from the community. So basically, communities prioritize their investment priorities, whether it's school or health post or local road or whatever they think they need. And the key element was community participation. And what happened during the first 4 or 5 years, they have embraced in a way this community participation model, and there were a number of community committees and little maintenance committees that took care of the infrastructure after the rehabilitation was completed, and they were established, but there was no structure to these community organizations, or there was no any forum for the exchange of experiences or anything of this sort. So what we decided with this GSDF to see how we can support the community organizations in a more holistic way and test some innovative back then in 2002 innovative approaches. So our idea was to get support for the community-based organizations that got created through these maintenance committees, etc., and see how we can support them. Support in 3 sort of ways, because all these community organizations, they wanted to go beyond the just infrastructure and like a school project, or beyond the project idea, and see what they as a community organization can do for the community. And so we decided that we would support those who can come up with the innovative, comprehensive community action plans that don't necessarily only include infrastructure, but go beyond that, like organized community events, organized social, cultural, and other events, but also look more deeply into community problems and what are the barriers to the development of their communities, and empower them with a little bit of funding so that they can implement these action plans. And there was a sort of competition between those community organizations to compete for these grants. So we thought that GSDF is a good facility through which this type of innovations can be tried. In addition to that, at the same time, we were in the process of preparing second Moldova Social Investment Fund, which was the follow-on IDA operation. And we thought that it's very good to have some of the early lessons from these innovative pilots to inform the development of the second IDA operation. And I think that's why we decided that the GSDF is a good vehicle. So we applied for the GSDF grant, we got it, and I think it was very important to try these things to inform the design of our new operation. So as a result of it, we had a number of components in the new operation were actually informed by the results of the GSDF grant, including a very important component of participatory monitoring and evaluation, which was part of the GSDF grant, whereas communities were organizing themselves and on following up after the completion of the whatever project they chose following up on the service delivery, having the service delivery scorecards, and basically not limiting themselves to only the project, but continuing after the project was completed. That was a very important component, and GSDF helped developing the manual for participatory monitoring and evaluation. The other aspect was the whole interaction between the community organization and local government, and how they can work together on the issues that communities have prioritized as their priority problems in the community. And there we also had a very interesting experience on developing the community action plans together with the community members and community committees, but with the local government. That actually gave us an idea for the second project, where we had a special component for the local government development, because unless these organizations, little organizations, they interact with the local government they cannot do many things on their own. But in addition to working with the local government, there was an element of demanding from the local government on the quality of the services delivered to the community, and in general, holding the local governments accountable. So the whole community voice and participation was a very important element in the design of the second social investment fund, and it was very much a lesson learned from the JSDF. So these were the two important elements that I think we have very much learned the lesson from JSDF and used them to inform the design of the second project. Another aspect was one of the components of the project was about specifically dealing with the services for the vulnerable population group, including the children and people with disabilities, etc. If you look back in Moldova, basically the social services for this type of like orphans and the people with this disability, they inherited the Soviet system where these services were provided in the big institutions, residential, so-called residential care institutions. So if you don't have parents, and you immediately go into the care of the state, and that is the large residential orphanage. So you're taken out of your community and put in this orphanage, so you don't, even if you have some extended family in the community, you don't have interaction with them, etc. And these residential care institutions are really not child-friendly or not people-friendly at all. They're really horrible, and there were a lot of horror stories about Moldovan orphanages and other big residential institutions. So the idea was at that point to try to have some other types of services for these populations. And the government actually was thinking that they need different alternative care services for these populations. However, there was no precedent or no experience what type of services one can provide in the community. So again, the idea was to provide some grants to either community organizations or NGOs who can actually innovate with this new type of services, and then use the lessons from these innovations to inform the government policy on establishing the alternative models of the social care service, and not only establishing models, but also see how the policy of contracting these services should be, whether it should be NGOs or private organizations or community organizations who should be providers of this type of services. So I think there were some community daycare centers for like children with disabilities that were financed out of GSDF, whereas the parents of the children that had disabilities and could not go to regular school would have a special daycare where the bus would collect them and bring them to the daycare, where special classes would be organized, etc. And then in the evening they would go home and live within their communities, and not feel isolated. So that was one type of alternatives that we experimented with under the GSDF. Another one was, there are a lot of children with mild forms of disabilities that could go to regular school. However, in Moldova, as in many other post-Soviet countries, the Soviet legacy would be that they would not go to regular school but go to special school. So getting these children into regular school and working with the children in the school with teachers to develop the acceptance. And I mean, the small things that one could do that simply the schools did not have the wheelchair access, for example. So one could build a wheelchair access and already eliminate one major obstacle for these kids to go to regular school. So these things, we also, I think, tried a few projects whereas the children with mild disabilities could go to regular school and feel included.